Episode 39, Behind the Red Line. Bruce McArthur, the Gardener of Death. Toronto's gay village was supposed to be a safe place, a community built on pride, resilience, and survival. A neighborhood filled with color, culture, nightlife, and people searching for belonging. But between 2010 and 2017, something was stalking the village. A shadow, a secret, a predator who blended into the crowd. Men began disappearing, not from dark alleyways, not from abandoned buildings, but from everyday life, from apartments, coffee shops, dating apps, bars, shared social circles, and quiet neighborhood streets. Their friends reported them missing. Families begged for answers. Community members protested, knowing something was wrong. But authorities said there was no evidence of a serial killer. They were wrong, because while activists fought for answers, while families searched, while the city insisted everything was fine, bodies were being hidden in large flower planters across Toronto, buried in soil, roots, and earth, concealed in places people walked past daily. On properties landscaped by one man, Bruce McArthur. This is the story of Toronto's most secretive serial killer. This is the case of Bruce McArthur, the Gardener of Death. To understand this case, you need to understand the community McArthur targeted. Toronto's gay village, also known simply as the Village, sits around Church and Wellesley Streets. It's one of Canada's most well-known LGBTQ plus neighborhoods. A place shaped by pride, nightlife, activism, and chosen family. But beneath the celebrations and rainbow flags, the village was also home to many people with nowhere else to go. Immigrants, refugees, sex workers, closeted men, people whose families abandoned them, people forced to hide their identities. This vulnerability made the community both resilient and painfully exposed. When the first men went missing, many friends and community members raised alarms. People went door to door asking questions. Local bars kept photo boards of missing community members. Rumors swirled about someone preying on marginalized men. Activists insisted, there is a serial killer in the village. But police didn't believe it. Not yet. Bruce McArthur seemed like the last person anyone would suspect. Born in 1951 in Ontario, he grew up on a farm, quiet, awkward, and deeply closeted. His religious family had no space for queerness. He married a woman, had children, worked in retail, but in the late 1990s, everything changed. His marriage fell apart. He came out as gay. He moved into Toronto's Village, and like many others, he tried to rebuild a new life. At age 50, he decorated houses for Christmas. He dressed up as Santa every year at the mall. He smiled often. He was gentle, polite, the kind of older man people trusted. And on the side, he ran a landscaping business. He had access to dozens of private backyards, empty garages, sheds, large wooden planters he built himself, and secluded gardens where no one asked questions. He had the perfect cover. A friendly man with keys to wealthy clients' properties, a man who moved soil, earth, and heavy planters for a living. A man no one would suspect. Long before the murders began, there were signs, warnings of what Bruce McArthur was capable of. In 2001, he assaulted a man he had been seeing. McArthur hit him with an iron pipe, bludgeoning him repeatedly. The victim barely survived. McArthur pled guilty, but avoided jail, receiving only probation and a ban from the village. The system's first failure, because the ban wasn't enforced. And McArthur returned to the neighborhood anyway, blending into the crowd, quietly, unnoticed. Years later, as the disappearances began, many would look back at this moment as a crossroads, a place where intervention could have stopped everything. But nothing happened, and the darkness inside him grew. Between 2010 and 2017, men connected to Toronto's LGBTQ community began disappearing. These were men who came from marginalized backgrounds, refugees from the Middle East and South Asia, men estranged from their families, men doing sex work, men who struggled with housing or immigration, men who lived in the shadows of society, because these were men who could vanish, and authorities would assume they moved, relapsed, ran away, or didn't want to be found. Their disappearances often went uninvestigated, but friends noticed, bartenders noticed, community organizers noticed. They held vigils, protests, town halls, posters plastered the neighborhood. Still, police publicly denied that a serial killer was operating in the village. McArthur's victims often trusted him. Many met him through dating apps, especially men seeking older partners. Some were men he had known socially. Others were isolated, undocumented, or financially struggling. Easy for him to target. McArthur invited them to apartments, parking lots, or his own bedroom. His preference for BDSM and controlled encounters made his violence harder to detect. He hid behind the idea of kink to mask non-consensual acts. He strangled his victims using tools, belts, ropes, pulleys. Police later found photos and staged images of his victims after death. dressed, or positioned in specific ways McArthur chose. But his disposal method was the darkest part of his operation. He hid their remains in large outdoor planters, some weighing hundreds of pounds, placed in private backyards across Toronto. He layered the bodies with soil, mulch, and flowers. People watered those plants. People sat beside them. Families took photos beside them. No one suspected a thing, because the killer wasn't hidden in the shadows. The killer was standing in the sunlight, tending to gardens. Toronto police launched several investigations into missing men from the village, but they stalled. Some officers insisted the men left voluntarily. Others blamed immigration instability or addiction. Some believed the missing men were connected to personal disputes, travel, or mental health. The LGBTQ plus community grew increasingly angry, staging protests outside police headquarters. They insisted something sinister was happening. But without a body or crime scene, the case couldn't move forward. For years, the killer walked free. By 2017, the disappearances couldn't be ignored. Police formed a special task force, Project Prism. They reviewed old cases, tracked digital footprints, compared notes, looked at overlapping social circles, studied dating app histories, and then a pattern emerged. Multiple missing men had one name in common: Bruce McArthur. Investigators began following him, watching him, monitoring his movements and digital activity. And then, January 18th, 2018, everything changed. Police observed McArthur bringing a man into his apartment. Fearing that this man would become the next victim, they burst into the home. What they found inside was horrifying. McArthur's apartment was small, cluttered, and eerily quiet. When police arrived, they found the man tied to the bed, but still alive. McArthur had just begun his ritual. They had stopped him in time. A search warrant for his digital files revealed staged photographs of his victims, images of men after their deaths, with McArthur carefully posing them. And then came the darkest discovery of all. Police began searching the properties McArthur landscaped. In one backyard, they opened a massive outdoor planter and found bone fragments, multiple sets of remains, layered in soil. In total, 8 victims were recovered. 8 men who vanished from the village. 8 men buried in gardens, porches, and flower beds, where families lived their everyday lives. Bruce McArthur was charged with 8 counts of first-degree murder. His victims were Skandaraj, Skanda Navaratnam, Abdul Basir Basir Faizi, Majid Hamid Kaihan, Sorush Mahmoodi, Krishna Kumar Kanagaratnam, Selim Esen, Andrew Kinsman, Dean Lissowick. They were sons, brothers, partners, community members, men who deserved to exist without fear. In 2019, McArthur pled guilty to all 8 murders. He was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years, essentially ensuring he would die behind bars. The aftermath of the case was explosive. Toronto police were heavily criticized for ignoring early warnings, mishandling investigations, and dismissing concerns from the LGBTQ community, especially from people of color, refugees, and sex workers. Many activists believe McArthur could have been stopped years earlier, before most of the murders occurred. The case forced Canada to confront uncomfortable truths about bias, policing, homophobia, racism, and the vulnerability of marginalized men. A memorial now stands in the village, honoring the victims. Their names are spoken, their lives remembered, their stories preserved. Bruce McArthur hid in plain sight for nearly a decade, not in the shadows, but in gardens, flower beds, and the daily routines of a city that never suspected him. He preyed on men searching for safety, men looking for connection, men who were promised hope, love, or belonging. And while authorities denied there was a predator, McArthur continued to kill. Tonight, we remember the 8 men whose lives were stolen. We honor them. We speak their names. We reclaim their stories. Because this case isn't just about a serial killer. It's about those who were lost, and the community that refused to stop fighting for them. This is the case of Bruce McArthur, the gardener of death,